Namaste. Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Harite Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshadani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaurava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Mukam Karvati Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Giram Yat Kripatamam Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Welcome to a new section and last section of the Bhagavad Gita, where we will be beginning with chapter 13 today, which looks at Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga. But before that, please kindly put your name, phone number, and place from which you're joining in the chat so we can track your attendance. We'll just do a quick review of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is one of the shortest chapters besides chapter 15, which has only 20 shlokas in it. And, in this particular chapter, Krishna is accepting that his devotees are greater than him. Of course, devotees do not think that they are greater than Krishna. It's just Krishna glorifying the devotees in 8 shlokas. So certainly Krishna thinks the world of his devotees. Krishna says only his bhaktas are dear to him. So this very dear to me is the end of each of the verses from verse 13 to verse 19. And then in verse 20, the Lord says, very, very dear to me. So dear is the Lord to his devotees. And he loves his devotees so much that he's happily become a charioteer for Arjuna on the battlefield. And besides that, Srila Prabhupada also says, because Krishna is saying his devotees are so great, if you associate with Krishna's devotees, then it'll be like as if you're inside a Mumbai train, one of the local trains, and you need to get off at a particular station. You don't have to work too hard to get out of the train because all of the others who are getting out of that station will forcefully also lead you out of the train onto the platform. So the power of association is just like that. So sometimes you may not be that inspired to chant, or you may not be that inspired to listen to Bhagavad Gita or go to the temple or do some seva. But simply, if you come in contact with other devotees, somehow or the other, because you're spending time with them, you will also make progress without you even being aware of it. So that is the beauty of practicing Bhakti Yoga. Yesterday, we were having a class in the temple also before we had our session. So we were talking about, one of the Matajis asked a question, why is it necessary to have Guru in life? Why can't you learn to love Krishna on your own? Do you really need Guru? Because Krishna already says, if you want to learn the truth, if you want to approach him, then you need to approach a Guru and who can speak about this transcendental subject matters. So one of the Mataji's questions was, why can't there are 6 steps to surrender to Krishna, which talks about accepting everything that is favorable for performing Krishna consciousness, rejecting anything that is unfavorable, and so on and so forth. It talks about how a devotee has to be humble, meek. They should depend only on Krishna and nobody else. They should have faith in Krishna. They should do everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Like this, there are 6 steps to surrender to Krishna. But the question was, why do you need a medium in between? Why can't you go back to Krishna on your own? Why can't you learn to love Krishna on your own? That was the question that was being asked. And Krishna does not accept service from you directly. So anything that you do for the pleasure of Krishna is directed through the Guru Parampara. Because you're not a pure devotee to connect to Krishna directly. So you have to offer your service through the Guru Parampara until it reaches Krishna. Therefore, Guru is important in life. You cannot approach Krishna or try to serve Krishna directly. Because you first have to learn to accept the instructions of Guru, hear from him submissively, serve him nicely, sincerely, surrender to Guru. Then it's like a practice for you to surrender to Krishna. So in a conference hall, once a group of people were discussing, as to who's the greatest. So one person stood up and said, the sky has to be the greatest because the sky simply contains everything. You can think of the sky like an upside down saucer, rather a cup placed onto a saucer. So somebody else said, well, certainly the sky is not the greatest because if there is a large set of clouds, the clouds can cover the sky. So the fact that clouds can cover the sky, definitely clouds must be greater than the sky. So somebody else stood up saying, how can the clouds be greater than the sky? The clouds are easily carried away by the wind. So certainly the wind must be greater than the clouds. Someone else said, no, but the wind can be blocked by a mountain. So certainly a mountain is greater than the wind, and wind is greater than the cloud is greater than the sky. Then someone said, but then the mountain is resting on Mother Earth. So certainly the earth itself is the greatest. And someone said, but then who's holding the earth up? It must be the Supreme Lord, because he must be the greatest. As they were discussing it, the Lord appeared there. He said, no. My devotees are great because I personally reside in the heart of my devotee. Therefore, my devotees are greater than me. And because the devotees are holding me in their heart and I am under their control, therefore, my devotee is greater than me. In this way, in chapter 12, Krishna is explaining the glories of being a Vaishnava, the glories of worshipping Krishna. Therefore, association with devotees or Vaishnava is very, very important. And because Krishna himself is glorifying how great his devotees are. In that process, Krishna, actually the chapter begins with Arjuna asking, should I worship the form or should I worship the formless aspect? Which is better and who is superior? And Krishna immediately says that those who worship my form, they are in a higher position. I consider them to be most perfect and they're most intimately engaged in devotional service with me. So if you'd had to look at the 3 sections of the Bhagavad Gita, you could say the first 6 chapters lead you from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga, because every single chapter from the 2nd chapter onwards ends with verses with Krishna glorifying Bhakti Yoga. So how from Karma Yoga you can go to Bhakti Yoga? And we talked about the reverse yoga ladder Krishna talks about. in shlokas 7 to 12. And then in chapter 7 to 12, Bhakti Yoga is discussed. Different levels of Bhakti Yoga, different stages of Bhakti Yoga. And in the new section that we're going to begin today, how you can go from Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. And Krishna talks about how his preference is that you do Kevala Bhakti, which is you're always thinking about him. You're always meditating on him. You're always absorbed in him. He says, which is essentially what that means is spontaneous love for Krishna, which none of us have, spontaneous love for Krishna. We really have to learn how to love Krishna. And that love for Krishna comes from sadhana, by following certain rules and regulations. Do this, don't do that. You know, our life is filled with do this, don't do that. So even with bhakti, because we don't have pure love for Krishna, we have forgotten Krishna for so long. Then yes, it begins with certain yam and niyam. You know, do this, don't do that. Some internal rules, some external rules to follow and to also avoid. So from shlokas 8 to 12, Krishna talks about the stages of bhakti, which is from pure love for Krishna to developing love for Krishna through the process of sadhana bhakti. So from prema bhakti to sadhana bhakti, he's coming in the descending order. From sadhana bhakti to karma yoga. And we talked about why Krishna is jumping way down the ladder and putting that next. Because karma yoga, if you just add Krishna to the picture, it becomes bhakti yoga. That's the only difference. If you can't work for the pleasure of Krishna, then Krishna says you should at least renounce all of your results, essentially practice nishkama karma yoga. If you can't do that, Krishna says, then you practice jnana yoga. If you can't do that, then Krishna says, then, dhyana yoga is higher than jnana yoga. So that is the descending order in which Krishna is prioritizing various types of yoga. So there are different paths for you to connect to Krishna. But every path ultimately will culminate in bhakti. Bhakti means pure love for the Lord. And you exhibit that love through the process of relationship. But Krishna also said that if you focus on the Brahma Jyoti aspect or his Parabrahman feature, then he says it's a very difficult situation. And an easy way to understand it is how a great devotee in the Sri Vaishnava tradition has described it. And also one more devotee. Vedanta Deshikar, he propagated this philosophy of Markara Kishora Nyaya, meaning
Markata Kishora Nyaya.
That is Markata. This is Marjara.
Marjala. Marjala Kishora Nyaya.
Yes, Marjara and Markata. Marjara is a kitten. A kitten simply has to cry out for its mother, and the cat comes and picks up the baby in its mouth and transports it. Even though the mouth, the same sharp teeth can actually harm the kitten or harm its enemy, those same sharp teeth do not harm its own child. So the mother is able to carry the kitten very gingerly back to safety. So this process is considered, or the analogy is used to say that this is how Bhakti Yoga is. In Bhakti Yoga, you simply cry out to the Lord and tell him you're useless and you don't have the capacity to develop pure love for him, that you are not pure, you are fallen, and it's going to take you many, many lifetimes to get that kind of pure love for Krishna. So Krishna, please help me. So you cry out to the Lord, and the Lord himself comes and picks you up. However, the Lord only does that if you make an endeavor. Without endeavor, Krishna is not going to come into your life. So you have to make an endeavor to practice your sadhana bhakti. So Markata Kishoranyaya is the analogy of a baby monkey hanging on to its mother as the mother jumps from branch to branch, tree to tree. So the mother does not make any effort to protect the child. It's up to the child to hold on to the mother. And this is the process for the other yogis, for the Jnana yogi, for the Dhyana yogi, for the Nishkama Karma yogi, for all of them. The Lord says he is not in the picture because they want to climb and come to him on their own. Which is why the Lord says that's going to be very difficult. How are you going to climb on your own? At some point, you may get tired, you may get frustrated, you may say this is too difficult, you may not be able to succeed in one life, and then next life, you're back to square one. So Krishna's preference is that you depend on him. That you take his ashray, you take his shelter. But to get to him, you have to have Guru in your life. You have to take shelter of Guru. So from shlokas 13 to 20, Krishna glorifies his devotees and he identifies 35 qualities of his devotees, with the most important quality being Shraddha or faith. In the 9 stages of making progress to the stage of Prema, it starts with Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anatta Nivritti, then Ruchi, Asakti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, then Bhava and Prema. So these are the 9 stages of development until you reach that final stage of Prema. But it begins with Shraddha. So you have to have faith. And it is not sentiment. Where sentiment can change. So it has to be stronger than that. That faith is derived from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So in one of the earlier sessions that we had a beautiful picture of a vendor holding a basket of fruits and Krishna clutching some fruits to his baby Krishna clutching some fruits. So there is this beautiful pastime where the Lord has observed that his mother is engaged in barter system and he wants to imitate and try it out for himself. So he notices that anytime a vendor comes out, calling out, saying, I have this, I have that, his mother would go out, take a few things with her, give it to the vendor, and then the vendor in return would supply her whatever she wanted. So Krishna thought, oh, the fruits lady is here and I want some fruits. So he imitates his mother. He takes a small fistful of rice in the palm of his hands and he thinks, yes, with this fistful of raw rice, I will give it to her and I will get all those beautiful fruits that she is selling. But by the time Krishna comes out to the vendor, there's hardly 1 or 2 grains of rice left in his palm. And he feels very dejected and he starts crying. But noticing his beauty, the fruit vendor says, don't cry. I will give you all my fruits. You just call me Maya once. And all of these fruits are yours. So hearing this, Krishna immediately stops crying and he satisfies the lady's request. And he gives her the 2 grain of rice that is still stuck to his chubby little palm. And the lady in turn gives him all of the fruits. So as Krishna begins to walk back inside, the lady notices that whatever remaining fruits that she had in the basket have all turned into jewels. Now, would you call this bhakti yoga? How would you categorize this? What was the fruit vendor feeling for Krishna? Was it bhakti? Or was it something else? What do you think? What caused her to give all the fruits to Krishna? What inspired her? Anybody? What caused her to give the fruits to Krishna? What attracted her to Krishna?
His beauty.
His beauty. Was she thinking, here is the supreme personality of Godhead? No. She did not know that that was the supreme Lord, but she was attracted to his beauty. Now, seeing the jewels in the basket, the precious stones, you may think, oh, this is like that karma kandi, you give Krishna something, Krishna gives you something in return. You benefit from that transaction. But no, what does she do? She goes back into the forest, dumps the jewels, fills her basket with fruits again, and comes back to Mother Yashoda's place. Why? Why does she come back? Did she come back with more fruits so she could get more jewels?
No.
No. Why does she come back?
He might have thought whatever in return she got, it was not sufficient for the, it is more sufficient for the fruit which she is given.
She already got some jewelry. She dropped it in the forest, filled her basket with fruits again, and came right back. What was the reason she came back?
Maybe by seeing Krishna once more.
Yeah,
Yes.
she just wanted to see the beauty of that child again. How many times we've gone to the temple, and especially if it's a very large temple, it's hard to get darshan. You go round and round trying to get as many darshan as you can. Of course, you can't do it in Tirupati, but maybe you can do it in other temples.
Even Guruvayur also we cannot do, no, Mataji.
You have to come back and stand in queue.
Okay.
But if you don't have to stand in queue, but you're really attracted to the Lord, won't you come back and see the deity again?
Yes.
So sometimes you'll come back again. Just you can take the darshan again because the Lord is so beautiful, so attractive. So the word Krishna means all attractive. So since he is all attractive, then it's no surprise that she wants to see him again. So of the 35 qualities Krishna talks about of his devotees when he's glorifying his devotees in those 8 shlokas, which is the first quality you should have? What's the first quality you're supposed to have? First quality is Shraddha. Shraddha or faith. So there was a wonderful Acharya in the Vaishnava Sampradaya called Alabandar, later known as Yamunacharya. Now, he was, from a very young age, he was well versed in scriptures, a great Pandit. Although he was a child, he would defeat others in debate and logic. And in one such way, somehow or the other, he happened to win a kingdom. And as a young child, he won the kingdom and becomes the king. So, of course, being a king is not a small thing, so much responsibility to take care of the citizens' welfare very nicely. Now, this Alabandar or Yamunacharya later on, his grandfather had taught him bhakti, had raised him to be a nice devotee. And his grandfather's name was Natha Muni. Natha Muni was thinking, I raised my grandson to be a devotee of the Lord, but somehow or the other, he is such an expert in debate. He won a kingdom, and now he's so busy running the kingdom, he's forgotten about the Lord. He stopped doing bhakti. He is engrossed in running the machinery of a kingdom. And he had a deep desire that his grandson should come back and become a devotee. So on his deathbed, he's thinking of his grandson, Alabandar. And he instructs his disciple, Ram Mishra, to do something. So the grandfather has passed away, but he's left a message to take to his grandson. So the disciple, Ram Mishra, now has this task of bringing Yamunacharya back to the path of bhakti. Now, how does he do it? We'll find out. So one day he bought a bunch of spinach. It's a special kind of spinach that is supposed to increase your memory power. It's supposed to nourish your intelligence. I do not know what it is specifically, which type of spinach it is. I've not researched that. So he goes over to the cook who normally cooks for the king, Yamunacharya, and he tells him, today I've brought this wonderful greens. Please cook something for your king and serve it to him. So this Ram Mishra would go every day and hand over the same bunch type of spinach to the cook who was cooking for Yamunacharya. So much so, Yamunacharya became addicted to this. In Tamil, we call it kire, spinach. And the king was really relishing this spinach. So one day the cook goes to serve the king and there is no spinach that day. And the king said, every day you are serving me spinach, why today you don't have any? So Yamunacharya got a little upset, thinking, every day you've been feeding me spinach, today why did you skip? You know I like it. To which the cook said, actually there was a gentleman who was bringing the spinach. Today he didn't come. And because he didn't come, you don't have spinach today. This certainly intrigued Yamunacharya. He said, what gentleman has come to you? He said, I don't know. If he comes tomorrow, I will be happy to ask him to come and meet you. Sure enough, Ram Mishra comes the next day, again with a bunch of spinach. This time, they have been instructed to take him to the king right away. So he goes to meet Yamunacharya. And at that time, Ram Mishra tells him, I am a disciple of your grandfather Nathamuni, and he has told me to instruct you that he has left the greatest of wealth for you, and he wants you to come and personally collect it. So Yamunacharya said, I'll send my soldiers. What's the need for me to come personally? To which Ram Mishra said, no. You can't send your soldiers to collect this wealth. You have to personally come and collect this wealth. So the king said, okay, no problem. I will travel along with my soldiers to come and collect the wealth. Anyway, he needed to raise some funds for his treasury. So he was thinking this wealth would certainly, whatever wealth my grandfather has left behind for me would be useful for the kingdom's treasury. To which Ram Mishra said, no. Your grandfather has instructed that this has to be handed to you in private. It is confidential. So in this way, Ram Mishra convinces Yamunacharya to travel with him one-on-one. And they traveled alone, the two of them. The first night, Ram Mishra opened his Bhagavad Gita copy and read chapter 12. Hearing the Lord glorifying his devotees, Yamunacharya started crying because he was able to recollect what his grandfather had taught him. The second night, they stop. Again, Ram Mishra is reading only the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And again, Yamunacharya cries and weeps. And he thinks, my God, look at how my life changed. I was practicing bhakti. Suddenly one day I won a kingdom. And look at how far I have come. I have left the Lord behind and I've gotten so deeply engrossed in running a kingdom. How I have wasted my life. So specifically, the 8th shloka and the 12th chapter is what was moving Yamunacharya so much. So Yamunacharya said, we can stop our travel here. You have already given me the greatest gift and the greatest treasure, which is a reminder for me of what I had left behind. I had stopped performing bhakti to take over a kingdom and run a kingdom. I don't need any other treasure. We can part ways now. I have recognized my mistake that I made. To which Ram Mishra said, no. Just one more night, we will reach that place. And if I don't follow the instructions of my spiritual master, he will be very displeased with me. So please come with me. I will hand over the treasure to you. And after that, we can part ways. So the third night, they reach the doors of Srirangam, where Ranganatha is lying in resplendence. And Ram Mishra said, this is what your grandfather wanted me to give you, this deity. This is the treasure. Of course, Yamunacharya used to visit Srirangam and the Ranganatha temple. So he understood what his grandfather was trying to tell him. That he needs to give up the kingdom and come back to the path of bhakti, which is exactly what Yamunacharya does. He hands over the kingdom to someone else and he divides his kingdom into two, and one half of that kingdom is handed over to Ranganatha and the other to caretakers. Later on, this Ala Bandar becomes Yamunacharya, and after Yamunacharya comes Ramanujacharya. So even here you can see Sometimes great devotees perform bhakti when they are very young, somehow or the other, something diverts their attention, and then they have to figure out how to come back to the path of bhakti. And the Lord certainly guides them back. He does not abandon them. Even if you abandon the Lord for whatever reason, still the Lord is keen to bring you back to the path. And He will devise ways by which to bring you back. That's the beauty of the Lord. So that's why the 12th chapter was titled Bhakti Yoga. It was also called the manual or the KPIs. KPI means, in the corporate world, KPI means key performance indicator. Here you could say it's a Krishna Prema indicator. What is Krishna Prema? Krishna himself is saying from Shlokas 13 to Shloka number 20. And in this way, Krishna glorifies his devotees. And we concluded yesterday by saying, but yeah, you're performing bhakti. The chances of you being able to perform pure bhakti is very rare because Krishna himself says it's very rare. Now you are trapped in this material world. How are you going to go back to Krishna? Okay, Krishna has said perform bhakti uninterruptedly. But how are you going to go back? How is Krishna going to come and pick you up? That is what is the new section and the last section of the Bhagavad Gita. And I said this is a little bit of a difficult section, difficult chapter. It's a little more technical. Arjuna begins this chapter by asking Krishna to clarify certain terms that he is not clear about. So let us see what those are. So we begin with Arjuna's question. And Krishna will tell us how you actually get vijnana or wisdom. Krishna will come back to the topic of soul and super soul. And how do you get realized knowledge, which is knowledge that you're able to experience. So here's the question that Arjuna is asking. Arjuna uvacha prakritam purusham chaiva kshetram kshetrajnam cha etad veditumichhami jnanam jneyam cha Keshava. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, Purusha, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." So, just reading this shloka can be very confusing. What is Arjuna really asking? So, let us look at this slide. So, there are 6 terms that Arjuna wants clarity with. Kshetra, Kshetrajna. Prakriti, Purusha. Jnana and Jneya. So these are the 6 questions Arjuna is asking Krishna. Can you explain these terms to me, what they mean? What is Prakriti? Who is Purusha? What is Kshetra? Who is Kshetrajna? What is Jnana and what is Jneya? In other words, Prakriti means nature. Purusha means enjoyer. One of the shlokas, Krishna says that this Jivatma is exploiting nature to have his various desires fulfilled. So that is Prakriti and Purusha. But then we'll come to how Krishna actually defines it. Then Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra means this body that you're residing in. Kshetrajna means the person who is residing in that body. And there are 2 people residing in every body. Who is that?
Soul and super soul.
Yes, soul and super soul. Then there is knowledge and realized knowledge, jnana and jnana. So these are the 6 questions Arjuna has asked. So let us see if you can match the following. So on the left, you see 1, 2, 3. On the right, you see ABC. Can you match? 1 will go with which on the right side? 2 will go with which? So 1 is a field, 2 is a farmer, 3 is the king. So 1 will go with which? So you can put your response in the chat. Will 1 go with C or B or A? Similarly, which will match with which? So a farmer can use his land to grow anything he wants. He can grow crops that have a very high yield and also bring him a great deal of profit. Or he could grow something less profitable with less yield. So it is the farmer's choice how he chooses to use the land. Either he can grow superior crops or he can grow inferior crops. So just as the king has the kingdom and the subject, here the farmer is the soul, the land is the body, and the king is the super soul, which means if the farmer is the soul, then the soul actually belongs to the Lord. And therefore the soul has to serve the Lord. What is in the best interest of the soul? The best interest of the soul is to serve the super soul. So essentially, it's about, your body is just a vehicle. The soul is occupying this body and it can use this body to serve Paramatma. But let's look at what is the actual difference between the body, between the soul and the super soul. So to use the body for our own spiritual advancement is like the farmer using the land to grow the most cash-rich crops, which will give him maximum benefit. Therefore, the body has to be utilized by the soul to advance spiritually. So what is the difference between the super soul and soul? Krishna says in the 4th chapter, never was there a time where in the 2nd chapter, never was there a time where I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, O Arjuna. Nor will we cease to be. So Krishna is talking about the eternality of the soul. But Krishna also says, I know all of your past births, Arjuna, but you don't remember. Since the super soul owns the super soul also knows the history of all of the souls. Whereas the soul at best can only know himself. He cannot know other souls. The super soul or the king, in effect, owns not just the land, but also the person who is tilling that land. And in a way, the king controls both. Similarly, the Paramatma controls both the soul and the body. And therefore, he is the supreme owner and controller. And the soul is simply the secondary owner and controller of the body. The super soul never makes any mistakes and therefore is always in a superior position to the soul. Whereas the soul, when it is conditioned or it is covered, it tends to fall in consciousness. And when the soul falls in consciousness because of conditioning, then the soul has to occupy lower forms or lower species of life. So when people claim to be God, you can ask them some very simple questions. Okay, tell me about my past life. Which birth is my birth this time? They should be able to answer all those questions because Krishna knows everything. Right? Can anybody tell you which birth this is for you? Is it your 8 million births, or have you crossed 8 million births? You're already like in 10 million, 20 million births. You don't know. And any other Jivatma also will not know. Right? So the body is just a vehicle on lease to you. At some point that lease gets over and you will change bodies. So understanding that there is a difference between the Atma and Paramatma, and that there is a difference between the Atma and the Deha, the body, that is wisdom. So that's the first step. So how is this wisdom obtained? So people may be very highly educated. They may be also very proud of their education. But Krishna is saying, if you do not understand that you're Atma, if you do not understand that I am the Supreme Lord, then I don't consider you to be very intelligent. So Krishna defines intelligence as to know the basics, that I am not this body, I am eternal spirit soul, and I am always the servant of Krishna. And because I am the servant of Krishna, what am I supposed to do after I know that Krishna is my master, I am his servant, then I am meant to serve him. But how do you get this wisdom? Krishna has already talked about this in the 34th shloka of the 4th chapter. Tad vidde pranipratena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. He says, very humbly, in a submissive mood, approach a bona fide guru. Ask him questions, serve him, surrender to him. So the most important qualification that Krishna identifies, because he defines knowledge from shlokas 8 to 12. Because remember, one of Arjuna's question is, what is jnana and what is jnaya? So Krishna is answering that question in these 5 shlokas. So Krishna is saying the most important qualification for a Jivatma is to perform unadulterated, uninterrupted bhakti. But the most essential qualification for a Jivatma is Acharya Upasana, acceptance of a recognized spiritual master. So for the second time in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is emphasizing the importance of accepting a living guru. And yes, Krishna has talked about the 18 items of knowledge here in these shlokas, among which he focuses on amanatvam, ahimsa, atma vinigraha, humility, non-violence, and self-control. So this is how wisdom is obtained. Wisdom is obtained by approaching a spiritual master and following the bona fide spiritual master's instructions to perform bhakti. But unfortunately, as Prahlad Maharaj, when he's speaking to Narasimhadev, he also says, actually, not everybody is interested in performing bhakti. Some people are only interested in themselves and themselves alone. So here Prahlad is telling Narasimhadev in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 7, Chapter 9, Shloka 44, My dear Lord Narasimhadev, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance. Not caring for the big cities and towns, they go to the Himalayas or the forest to meditate with vows of silence. Maunavrata. They are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone. Leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals, I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to shelter at your lotus feet. Prahlad is a preacher at a very young age. Yeah, the minute his teachers left, and then he started teaching his friends. What is Prahlad saying? At a very young age, at a precocious age, Prahlad has understood something very important. He says, yes, there are great personalities, but they are only interested in their own salvation. And because they are interested only in their own salvation, their own liberation, they will go off to the Himalayas, go quietly, practice severe austerities and try to get themselves out of this prison. And so Prahlad is saying, isn't that very selfish? If they've figured out how you can get out of this prison, shouldn't they help the others also get out of prison? Isn't that true compassion? Therefore, Prahlad says, yes, others may have gone off into the forest to fend for themselves, to take care of themselves, their own spiritual needs. But he says, I don't want to get this mukti by myself. I want to drag everybody back to Krishna. And I know how it's done. Nobody can attain to Krishna, Prahlad is telling Narasimhadev, without taking the shelter of your lotus feet. And just as I am hankering to come back to your lotus feet, I also want the other Jivatmas to take shelter at your lotus feet. And this is how Prahlad is identifying that preaching is important. Just as much as you have been saved by attending Bhagavad Gita classes, you're chanting, you're keeping Ekadasi fast, you should help others also do the same thing. So what we understand through Prahlad's mood is that all of our goal is the same. It's just that some of us have forgotten what that goal is. So a genuine spiritual master will not worry only about his own salvation. He will think, as Krishna says, my devotees are paradukka dukhi. When they see others suffering, they cannot tolerate it. So out of great humility, they will try to rescue others, try to connect them to Krishna. So this is the mood of great devotees. So coming to the difference between the soul and super soul, this is Nyeyam, Kshetra and also Kshetrajna. Gyeyam yatta pravakshyami yajñātvāmritamashnuté anādimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. Here Krishna is saying, I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me. lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So Krishna is saying the Jivatma is always pure, but it is also subordinate to me. It has always existed, but it is always subordinate. And that particular Jivatma has no cause and effect. That is what Krishna is saying here in the 13th shloka. Therefore, Acharyas advise us that we should do everything that is favorable for Krishna consciousness. And we should reject anything that is not favorable for us advancing in Krishna consciousness. So here, Jneyam is being explained. There is a soul that understands its body. There is also the soul, super soul that understands the soul and the body in which that soul is residing for that present moment. So it may be easy for us to perceive the soul, but it is extremely difficult for us to perceive Paramatma. To perceive Paramatma also you need Guru's help. So Krishna is saying the soul is eternal. It has no beginning. But it is always bound to Krishna because it is dependent on Krishna. And there is no cause or effect for the soul. It is beyond this material world. The soul is spiritual. And therefore it belongs in the spiritual world. So you have to do what is necessary for the soul. So whatever the body wants, you need to take care of that. But whatever the soul needs, you also need to take care of that. Everything that the soul wants is to go back to the spiritual world. What the body wants is just basics, just some food, shelter, clothing, that is sufficient. Therefore, simple living, high thinking. If you hear Krishna saying, Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charam evacha sukshmatvat tadda vigneyam durastham chantike chatad. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. This definitely sounds like a riddle that Krishna is. So essentially, Krishna is saying, Paramatma exists within you and outside you also. Within you as Paramatma, outside you, he pervades through all of his Shakti potency that he's already talked about in the 10th chapter. So what is the characteristics of this Paramatma? He is all pervading. He's everywhere. He is the origin of the senses, and therefore he is called the master of the senses, Krishikesha. But the Paramatma himself has no senses, meaning he has no material senses. The Paramatma has spiritual senses. He is superior, and he is the origin of the senses of the soul. The Paramatma is always perfect. There are no defects. He knows everything that you're thinking and your desires because he is seated as a witness and residing within your heart. Now, Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam jneyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vijnaya madbhavayopapadyate. Thus the field of activities, which is called kshetra, the body, knowledge, jnanam, and the knowable, jneyam, which is the soul and the super soul, have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So even here, Krishna is saying these topics are not easy to understand, but my devotees can understand it very easily. So what is the important message for us? Krishna is saying, you, the Jivatma, you are not the controller. You hand over the control of your life to Krishna. When you do that, you will experience real happiness. So one day, a king who's ruling a kingdom, he's quite frustrated because nothing is working right in his kingdom. And he thinks, because of me, my citizens are suffering. Therefore, it does not make sense for me to continue to be the king. Let me give up the kingdom and, go take care of myself first. Because apparently I'm not a very good king and nothing is going well. So he goes into the forest, and there is a rishi in that forest, and he asks the king, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And the king says, "Look, I'm not able to manage the kingdom very well, so I thought I'll come here and kind of focus on myself." And the rishi says, "Oh, is that it? Then I'll tell you what, you hand over your kingdom to me." And the king says, "Thank God, I found somebody else to take care of this difficult task of running the kingdom." And the king thought, okay, so now I can focus on myself. But the rishi said, "I have a job for you though." And the king thought, okay, if a rishi is saying I have a job for you, how can I decline? So the rishi tells him, "I want you to go back and run the kingdom. But remember, the kingdom doesn't belong to you. It belongs to me." So the king was intrigued. Okay, I don't have the pressure of thinking that this is my kingdom. So the king went back, and he was a glorious ruler. Why? Because he no longer had attachment and ownership of the kingdom. So it released all the pressure. He was able to do his job wonderfully well because there was no sense of ownership of that kingdom. Similarly, when we are also leading our life, whatever happens, we know that somebody else is in control. Somebody else is the proprietor, somebody else is the controller. Just like the rishi said, I'm the proprietor of this kingdom now. You just rule on my behalf. Similarly, here, your body doesn't belong to you. Nothing belongs to you. The soul is just occupying this body for a brief period of time. Simply perform your duty in the right frame of mind, and in this mood of detachment, you will be able to go to Krishna again. You become attached to Krishna and think everything else is not my ownership. So there's a nice little story to make this even more clear. So one day a man's house caught fire, and he was thinking a few weeks before the house caught fire that he should sell his house. So when the house caught fire, he was thinking, he was quite distressed, I wish I had gotten, I had wished I had sold this house. So suddenly his son comes home and he says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, you were traveling. I sold the house last week." So the father feels so relieved, thinking, "Oh, I was thinking I'm completely destroyed because I couldn't sell the house and now the house is on fire. So I lost quite a bit of my wealth." But the minute the son said this, the father felt such great relief. Why? Because he thought it is no longer my property. That house does not belong to me anymore. Therefore, he felt relief. But then the son said, "There is a small problem. Although I sold it last week, we have not received the payment yet. The house is sold, but the payment has not been made." So again, the father experiences such distress and anxiety. Why? Because now there is a cloud House is sold, but no money. No money has been received. So if you think you own something, including your family, your property, your wealth, your intelligence, whatever it is that you have accumulated over life, then you have missed the opportunity to become the servant of Krishna because you think you own everything. So servant of Krishna means you serve your family members like they belong to Krishna. You use your funds like they belong to Krishna. You use your intelligence like your intelligence belongs to Krishna. You use your body in the service of Krishna. You use your mind in the service of Krishna. This is actually practicing Krishna consciousness. So the minute you remove ownership of everything and remember that nothing belongs to you, everything has been given to you by Krishna. Temporarily, you are in this position of father, mother, child, brother, sister. And so many other designations, so many other identities. If we can remember this throughout our life, you can completely remove stress. Because stress comes with ownership. Does that make sense? Stress comes with ownership. When you take ownership, proprietorship, and controllership of everything, then you will experience stress. Because you think, oh, it's mine. I have to protect it. I have to maintain it. So rather be under the Lord's control and shelter, then you can be peaceful and happy. So this is the realized wisdom made real for us through this particular chapter. Although I said this chapter is quite technical and hard to understand. So if you look at this picture, there is Krishna and Balaram dancing away with complete happiness with all their friends, with not a care in the world. And then you have a group of people in a pub, it looks like. So who is really happy here? Are the people who are drinking happy, or are the youngsters who are dancing and singing and enjoying with Krishna? Who is happy? For example, there is a joke that says, if a mosquito sits on a cow, it's not going to drink the cow's milk. It's only going to drink the cow's blood because that's its nature. So our nature is that we have a tendency where we want to enjoy ourselves rather than trying to please Krishna, because by pleasing Krishna also you can enjoy yourself. Rather than trying to enjoy ourselves without Krishna, because then you are actually in the hands of Maya Devi, in the grips of Maya Devi. So what is realized wisdom? Jnaya. Still Krishna is expanding on that. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So, when you have the sense of ownership, you will experience duality, ups and downs. And Krishna has introduced something new because he is going to get ready to talk about gunas in the next chapter. Krishna is saying the ups and downs you experience is because of the three gunas, the sattva gun, rajagun, and tamogun. So once one ISKCON devotee went and met a great music producer. He wanted to ask him for some donation. So when the music producer saw him, he asked him, you're all brahmacharis. Are you really happy? He asked this brahmachari. You must be leading such an austere life. In the brahmachari ashram, you just have, it's like a dorm room, no privacy. All brahmacharis living together. You just have one small suitcase in which your entire life's belongings are in. You may have one small shelf to keep your things. That is brahmachari life in the temple. It's a very austere life. You don't have luxury in the brahmachari ashram. So the producer asked him, you have given up so much. Are you really happy? Because it's a life of sacrifice. And the devotee turned around and asked the producer, are you happy? And he said, yeah, sometimes. So the devotee asked him, what makes you happy? So the producer said, oh, every day I try to sing. That makes me happy. Once a week, I go to the club with my friends. We dance and we party. That makes me happy. The devotee said, I'm happy every day, every minute, every single second. And I don't go to a club and party. I sing and dance and eat every day in the temple. So I'm actually happier than you because I don't have any possessions. But I'm doing the same things you're doing, but I'm doing it with Krishna in the picture. I'm singing for Krishna, I'm dancing for Krishna, and I'm honoring Krishna Prasadam every day. So I'm also partying. But in my party, Krishna is the main guest. So different people have different conceptions of what it means to be happy. They think to be happy, you must have so much money in the bank account, so much set aside for your retirement, so many different conceptions of happiness. You can be happy with next to nothing. So oftentimes what happens is we forget what is important in life. And we're looking for all kinds of happiness in all kinds of material things, and that makes us unhappy. So Krishna is saying, first of all, this Jivatma is occupying this body, and is trying to enjoy this body. That is the problem with the Jivatma. It's trying to enjoy this body, which is temporary. Krishna is saying, yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter. Upadrashta Anumanta, Krishna is saying. That means the Jivatma cannot enjoy anything unless the Paramatma sanctions. Upadrashta, overseer, Anumanta, permitter. So Krishna is saying the Jivatma may make all kinds of plans to enjoy. Unless I sanction it as the Paramatma, the Jivatma cannot do anything. So here, what we understand is that essentially Krishna is talking about how we change bodies. How what you're doing in this life determines what body you get in your next life. So when the soul has desires, at the time of death, remember in the 8th chapter, Krishna said, if you think of me alone, you'll come back to me. If you think of anything else, you'll have to take another body. So depending on what desire the soul still has at the time it exits that body, then Krishna says, I instruct Prakriti to give a particular body so that that Jivatma can continue its journey of trying to enjoy separately from me. So today what you're doing decides what body you are going to get tomorrow when you have to give up this body. So if you want to go back to the spiritual world, then you will make a very intelligent choice. If you change your desire, you're automatically changing your body. If your desire is to go back to Krishna, then certainly Krishna will help you get your spiritual body back. So this particular human form has been given to you by Krishna because it is the best way for you to go back to Krishna. If you're in animal species or if you're in lower levels of consciousness, you cannot go back to Krishna. But if you use this body, mind, senses, everything in the service of Krishna, then you can just exit this world. So Krishna is saying, I am sitting within you as the Paramatma. If you will accept my guidance as the attorney, because you are sitting in jail, you need somebody to defend you and take you out of here. I am ready to become that attorney. But you have to hire me. You have to ask for my help. So here is the last shloka. Kshetra kshetrajnayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye viduryanti te param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Essentially, Krishna is saying, this is ultimately realized wisdom. That the body must be used to help the soul go back to Krishna, to go back to the spiritual world. But then this body has to fight the three gunas. The soul has to fight the three gunas. Krishna is ready to help you as Paramatma, as the attorney. And in the 14th chapter, Krishna is going to say, if you, because Krishna has introduced the topic of the three gunas here by saying the Jivatma is always going up and down, up and down, up and down due to the influence of the three gunas, then Krishna is ready to talk about Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamogun in the 14th chapter. And the most important takeaway for us is that if you perform bhakti, you can overcome all these three gunas, including Sattvagun, and prepare yourself to go back to the spiritual world. So this is the 13th chapter, which was called Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. The nature of consciousness as it is influenced. And the single word summary today was Paramatma or attorney. Krishna is ready to be your guide, your counsel, provided you are ready to follow his instructions. Imagine if suddenly you're thrown in jail and you have no money. Then you depend on the government to appoint somebody, and you are just praying and hoping that person can defend your case very nicely and get you out of this prison. At least to be able to post a bond so you're free for some time, so you can fight your case. Krishna is saying, I'm ready to do that. But you have to ask for me. You have to ask for my intervention. If you do that, then I can help you get out of this prison. If you don't want me in your life, then I'm not going to intervene and impose myself on you. So Krishna wants you to ask him for help. And when you do that, he's ready. So any questions on this chapter? This chapter is a little technical, as I said, but so what are the 6 terms that Arjuna asked clarification on? Prakriti and Purusha, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, and Jnana and Jnaya. So in response to these 6 questions, the entire chapter 13 was spoken by Krishna. Okay. Any questions based on today's chapter? All right. So if there are no questions, then we will see you tomorrow for chapter 14. Tomorrow's chapter will be very interesting because Krishna will talk about the 3 gunas. So don't miss the session tomorrow. You'll learn a lot about the 3 gunas. Okay, thank you very much. Vancha kalpadarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti Vaishnava Vrindi ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranathai ki jai. Thank you, devotees. We will see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.